I tried beating Phantom Liberty as a pacifist, meaning no eliminations at all. That's a pretty simple idea, but with Phantom Liberty there is a lot of forced combat, which greatly complicates things. So let's make that clear. Avoiding takedowns or combat is impossible in Phantom Liberty, but getting through it without killing anyone? That might be doable. And here comes the obligatory spoiler warning, as I'm going to be structuring this video with the assumption that you know how Phantom Liberty goes. This isn't a full walkthrough of everything I do, and I will mostly be breezing through the narrative stuff to get to the gameplay sections. Whenever I thought about trying this, I figured the bookends would be the biggest problem. Rescuing the president and the fight against Bargus before the Chimera, as well as the unavoidable combat in both of the ending paths. I'm also only going for main story completion, not every side job and gig. I decided to go into the expansion with an endgame build. With the amount of enemies you have to fight, doing this earlier may technically be possible, but incredibly improbable. So I was close to level 50, most of my cyberware was tier 5, I had tier 5 quick hacks, and tier 5 weapons and crafting components were dropping regularly. If you've seen my video about the Johnny Pacifist line during Tapeworm, it's the same save from that video. This means that I will also be using the Ultimate Kill Counter mod by Atticus32. Aside from tracking kills, this mod also changes a few things, such as allowing the stashing of knocked out bodies and destroying robots without them counting as kills. Without this mod, this run wouldn't be possible for reasons you'll see later. This is the only mod I have that changes gameplay. Everything else is either cosmetic or quality of life. Here's how the build looks. I have body at 14, but with tier 5 gorilla arms adding +6, I will be able to pass any body check in the game. I have 9 points in reflex, purely to get the dash perk. I have tech maxed, which is just an excellent tree for practically any build. Then I have intelligence maxed out for net running reasons, and the rest I began dumping into cool to eventually be able to sprint while crouching. As far as cyberware goes, I have mostly stuff that helps with net running. A couple of big defensive items as well, such as the episkeleton, cellular adapter, biomonitor, and pain editor. For my deck, I'm using a Tetratronic Rippler, which I believe gives you the most amount of RAM of 20 at tier 5++. To take out enemies non-lethally, I would be relying primarily on quick hacks. At this stage, there are two chains that I like to use. The first is tier 4 memory wipe, tier 2 reboot optics, and tier 5 sonic shock. Tier 4 memory wipe makes your hack chain untraceable, and tier 5 sonic shock will effectively knock out any non-boss level enemy when loaded after memory wipe and reboot optics. So in short, this is an untraceable knockout chain for the cost of roughly 18 RAM, functionally the same as System Collapse, but a whole 10 RAM cheaper. When you unlock the iconic version of Sonic Shock later, this cost becomes 14. On very hard especially, this is the holy grail right here. I'm not even sure if this challenge would be possible without this. Sometimes this will instantly knock out enemies, but normally it makes them do a longer animation before they fully fall over. For simplicity, I'll refer to this as Chain 1. The second chain is Tier 4 Memory Wipe, Tier 5 Cyberware Malfunction, and Tier 5 Short Circuit. We have the wipe again to make the chain untraceable, and Short Circuit is a non-lethal damage quick hack. Cyberware Malfunction naturally synergizes with Short Circuit, but the weak spot explosion can sometimes trigger other explosives in the vicinity, so it's not always safe to deploy. When already in combat, I can just spam Cyberware Malfunction and Short Circuit if I need some quick control and damage. So those two chains are my methods of attack. Weapons can be turned non-lethal using the Pax mod, but enemies can still die if you accidentally unload extra bullets into them after they've been downed. I found that too risky, so I planned on running around with no weapons at all, aside from a few scenarios such as the Chimera fight. Alright, that's all the setup stuff mostly explained. Now it's time to head over to the Dogtown gate and meet Somi. Just for fun, let's turn V into everyone's favorite nervous Nelly. That's Grace! Totally didn't do that just to make that dumb joke. Anyways, let's take a snapshot of the stats going into Phantom Liberty for comparison later. These 3 at the top are the ones to watch for. The rest track non-lethals, which I'm not exactly concerned about. Keeping the kills at 0 is the goal. Also, for whatever reason, it seems like a chain 1 knockout sometimes doesn't show up as any stat in this list, so it might be categorized in some other way. For the first relic points, I'm taking the vulnerability perk. There's nothing else remarkable about the beginning, so let's just skip the 30 to 40 minutes of parkouring and breaking into Dogtown. Actually here, you can watch the SF1 crash in third person. I have enough tech and body to take the shortcut here, but I wanted to go up the left side to get the relic point so I could put it in machine learning. That should also help with the Chimera fight. There's a couple of enemies around here, but Chain 1 makes quick work of them. So now it's up to the SF1 crash site. Unfortunately, all I can really do is sit in the back and beam everyone with Chain 1. This prevents combat from triggering, so at least I wouldn't get shot at, but man, this is sort of the coward's way out. Most of the time is spent waiting around for RAM to regenerate. Activating overclock can sometimes trigger a trace hack, so I tried to avoid that since staying undetected is key to survival. Making my way to the prez, sipping this cact. Barg is about to get owned with the hacks. That's a Chain 1. After meeting with Myers, combat is forced upon you, so I started using Chain 2 without memory wipe. But then... you hear that splat? Yeah, that guy fell to his death while affected by my hacks, so I guess that registered as a kill. So after a reload, I switched back to only using Chain 1. That at least stopped the guys from falling down. It's also worth noting that the kill counter mod does not count enemies killed by your companions, so any ones that Myers was responsible for doesn't count. With the enemies cleared and the count still at 0, things are going good. Getting through the abandoned hotel and past the drone without detection, the next batch of enemies is at the exit. Chain 1 allowed me to deal with them without starting a fight. I took the car and accidentally ran over an NPC. Couldn't even see him. Apparently in the vanilla game this doesn't count as a kill, but the kill counter mod changes that, so reload it is. For this part I usually dive the car off the nearby cliff here and wait for an opportune time to drive to the garage. Let's fast forward a bit to the fight against Bargist. Combat is forced here once again, so my plan was to just run around underneath the balcony on the right side, occasionally popping quick hacks on them. I was able to survive and Somi rezzed the Chimera, but after the dust settled and I checked my stats... that's weird. I suspect that Somi killed some guys affected by my quick hacks and that counted against me. I reloaded and once the Chimera started to res, I sat behind some crates and didn't attack Bargis at all. This worked, and the room was clear with the count at 0. I decided to put another point in body to get access to Adrenaline Rush. I probably should have done that earlier, but hindsight is 20/20. Next, we have the fight against the Chimera. I allowed myself to pull out some weapons here. Eventually, I flipped the lid and blew it up. I got confirmation that the Chimera being destroyed doesn't count as a kill, and with that being the final combat encounter of Phantom Liberty's opening, I've successfully infiltrated Dogtown with no eliminations. After reaching the Crest Street hideout, settling in, and peacefully talking down Jacob and Taylor, it was time to meet Reed. I met him, brought him back to Myers, and had him evacuate her out of Dogtown. Since I had time to kill while waiting for the next objective, I decided to get started on the gigs that you would eventually have to complete for Mr. Hands. First up was Dogtown Saints. With this gig, I've had some issues with Chain 1 for the peaceful outcome, so I used the second chain with Short Circuit instead, and also did some traditional knockouts. I then talked Nika down with these dialogue choices. Sparing all the scavs seemingly results in the best outcome for this gig, as confirmed by the call with Mr. Hands.
Premium work, V. You even spared the scavengers. Good. They'll have nothing to avenge with Anderson later.
The next one I did was waiting for Dodger. I ended up using more grapples than usual in this one. With Dodger, I ended things peacefully with these dialogue choices, which is also only possible if you did not eliminate any of the Bargus guards. It is possible to take out Dodger non-lethally, but for the game to consider him as alive, I think you have to go the dialogue route. There used to be a bug where the guys would still run him over, but I think they fixed it. At least for me, it worked. I then did treating symptoms. The only thing worth mentioning about this one is that during the fight with the robot, destroying the main one will self-destruct the others. Since the robots thankfully don't count, I also had the rare opportunity to use a gun. I talked to Agent Noel and allowed him to continue his plan, which is the best outcome anyway. Somehow, enough time still hadn't passed, so I also did the side job balls to the wall. The kill counter mod states that enemies killed out of body, such as Johnny, Tutorial Man, and Hansen, don't count. I don't know if that's vanilla behavior as well, but for this run it will be fine. Paco did this thing where he sorta died for a bit, and that was weird. I texted Pan Am to deal with those two. Finally, Reed called, so it was time to head to the Moth to meet Alex. After meeting Alex and making a mess all over the bar, I went with Reed to confront Slider. In this save, I sided against the Voodoo Boys, meaning that I simply couldn't walk past them here. So we took the vent, and my build allowed me to disarm the traps. Then I deployed Chain 1 on everyone in the main room and used Slider to talk to Songbird. After Slider dies, a new set of VDBs will enter the building. Chain 1 made quick work of them as well, and that's a pretty easy mission to complete with no eliminations. Because I had already finished 3 gigs, Mr. Hands got to work immediately on procuring the blueprints for the Black Sapphire, so all I had to do was sleep to advance time to get the text to meet him. I met with Hands, took the shard, and returned to the Moth to go over the plan. Before getting on with the infiltration, I obtained an additional relic point which allowed me to get the emergency cloaking perk. I then went ahead with infiltrating the Black Sapphire. Once you get to the warehouse, there's 2 guards which are pretty easy to dispose of. One even stands under a trap for an easy knockout. The kill counter mod sometimes presents problems with the stashing change, so sometimes you gotta move bodies instead, and I moved the downstairs guys so the elevator dudes wouldn't see them. For some reason, they all decided to crowd in the elevator, but after a while I was able to throw Chain 1 on all of them. Next up is the sniper portion of the mission. As you probably guessed, I'm not going to be using the sniper at all, and this is where I think it would be impossible without quick hacks at least. I scanned the mine, cameras, and elevator. The elevator can be sent down with intelligence, which speeds up the routing a bit. You can do a lot of things early during this part, so I pre-shot the sensor. There's 3 guards here, but one will eventually leave, and I used Chain 1 to knock them both out. By the time Reed caught up to the middle, I sent the elevator down and allowed him to move forward. I then used Chain 1 on the sniper overlooking, and used the cameras to use Chain 1 on the guy behind the tarp. There's 2 final guards that appear in the hall on the left, and I knocked them both out with the crate. Nothing wrong with a little style, am I right? After meeting with Reed, I checked the count and saw 2 kills have registered, so it turns out there is something wrong with the little style. So I redid everything exactly the same, only I used Chain 1 on them instead. Not as cool, but guaranteed knockouts. The infiltration is complete with the count still at 0. All that's left is to attend the party. At the party, I met Somi, enjoyed a bit of Lizzie's performance, and went through with scanning the twins. I miraculously won roulette and was promptly booted from the Black Sapphire. I then decided to sleep a bit, but Reed was still plotting, so I had time to kill. I figured it's worth trying a few more gigs, so I started with Prototype in the scraper and rescued Hassan. I told Hands to extract the implant and let him walk. I then did Talent Academy and made a deal with Vargas to send Tommy to a team. At this point, Reed still hadn't called, so I decided to sleep a few more hours to get him to. At the Moth, I yucked it up with the FIA agents and received the plan for rescuing Somi. There were some VDBs at the first transceiver, and I believe that depends on how you dealt with them in Act 2. Thanks to my high int build, I did not have to go to the second transceiver and pinged it remotely. I also received a text from Alex to meet her at the Moth, so I decided to meet her before Somi. but some VDBs and Bargus started fighting each other, which sent all the NPCs into a panic. At the bar, I drank and danced with Alex. I then went to meet with Songbird, and sadly a sandstorm hit, which completely ruined her hangout spot. I tried staying neutral in my responses, as I may need to betray her going forward. For now, I want to make sure I get iconic Sonic Shock before proceeding down either path. So I did the scav increased criminal activity thing and hacked the robot from out of range until it died. Unfortunately, the only access point I found gave me iconic cyberware malfunction, which is still good, but not what I was after. I then did the Bargus criminal activity. 3 access points here, and unfortunately no Sonic Shock crafting spec obtained from any of them. I did see Ross clipping through the floor, which was a bit weird. Ross is a pretty odd boss in that he has to be fought in 2 stages. He can be put to sleep like the other cyber psychos in this mech thing. Finally, I decided to do full disclosure and the gig last login from the base game, which occur at the same place. Thankfully, the first point I found rewarded the crafting spec, so now knockouts start at 14 RAM instead of 18. What sucks about this though is that equipping the iconic version reshuffles the order, and my muscle memory still remembers the old one. I dropped off Sandra Dorsett's databank, and now I was ready to get my face implant. So now I've reached a bit of a dilemma. What path do I go down? Siding with Reed means fighting Maxtac, and potentially Kurt Hansen. Siding with Songbird means that I can probably get through most of NCX fine, but once I plug into her and unleash the Black Wall on the Black Ops guys, surely that has to be lethal. But can the Maxtac guys even be defeated non-lethally? Well, I decided to try both. Let's start with Reed. It's off to Farida's to get my face replaced, then to the vantage point to trace the twins. I didn't bother waiting out the whole conversation to learn about Slider's stash, so I just took the car over as soon as possible. Then I became a roar, drove to the stadium, and met with Hansen. Somi came up to end that encounter, and I dropped a save here to return to Songbird's path later. See all this? That's why the named saves mod is goated. One of my least favorite things about siding with Reed is actually this moment right here. Watching Alex die and then Songbird do the whole how could you spiel really sucks, main. So now I have to get through the stadium. The only problem is that at this point on very hard, enemies can detect you really fast, so I had to take it slow. In the first room, I jumped to the second level, which let me skip a few guards. Clearing the market area was mostly the same, and I just hung back and put everyone to sleep using chain 1. One of the turrets went off, which was a bit alarming, but aside from that, all good. I made it to the part where you fight Hansen, and my plan was to just sneak past him, which apparently is possible. The first couple of times I tried taking it slow and picking them off, but I think these guys are scripted to lock onto you as soon as one gets damaged. That or after a set amount of time. So eventually I just did a full sprint and popped my tier 5 optical camo, and that was enough to get me past them. The detection meter didn't even pop up on any of them as I ran by, and Hansen never even spawned. After taking the elevator, I slept a couple of drones in the garage and then hopped into Reed's car to exfil the stadium. It seems like the game glitched for me, and Reed ended up driving through several objects and guards. We watched Somi get captured by Maxtac, and I was able to call Nyx for help with this mission since I'd completed all his quests. I met with him at Arasaka Memorial to receive the convoy route, and Mr. Hands texted me saying that Hansen got killed by some random schmuck at the stadium. Heh, what a noob. I took this time to upgrade whatever cyberware I had left, including swapping out cellular adapter for the iconic chitin one. I'm pretty tanky now, so I think I should be able to handle Maxtac. I met Reed at the abandoned hotel, talked with the various 6th Street guys, and began the ambush. I was a bit worried that Reed's sniping and turrets may trigger some kills, but I was able to use chain 1 on most of the escorting officers and bots. No casualties so far. The Maxtac fight was surprisingly easier than expected. I think I was simply too tanky to take any meaningful damage, even on very hard. I did use a pistol to shoot weak spots once in a while, but made sure to last hit with short circuit. I also believe Reed is programmed to not kill any of them. I checked the count after every guy was finished and can confirm that all 4 Maxtac members can be taken down non-lethally. With that being the last encounter in Reed's path, I should be clear on a successful Pacifist run. Now I just need to chase down Songbird and Cynosure and do a little bit of pants shitting. Fitting place for Grace to end up at least.
What is this place?
Some odd stuff happened in Cynosure, such as this weird moment where I was able to detach from the computer while the Cerberus was practically inside of me. Then it somehow did not detect me in the Datafort Central Command. Then I think my synaptic adapter caused me to get detected while in a hiding spot. And finally, it dropped down from the ceiling next to me, then did some insane Sandevistan maneuver. I obviously had to spare Somi despite her begging for death. I think in this scene, Minji Chang gives the best performance of the entire expansion. We delivered Somi to the NUSA, who then took her away. V hated sand, and after talking with Johnny, it was over. Phantom Liberty down Reed's path without a single elimination. Not bad. Well, I guess technically there's the tower part of it, but V can't even beat a thug in that one. Interestingly, sparing Songbird means you can tell Johnny why you didn't kill her, and V still says you've zeroed plenty of people.
How's it feel, with all that's gone down?
Zeroed plenty of people, but with her, I just couldn't find it in me.
Alright then, now it's time to go the other way. Remember that save I made earlier? Well, now we press the Side with Somi button and get to leave the stadium with her. Luckily, kills that Somi is responsible for, such as the chopper rotors, don't count as kills for V. Of course, I could have just not done this, but for the sake of this run, I think it was worth finding out. The stadium escape mostly plays out exactly the same, although something weird was happening with Murphy. On very hard, sending the cars isn't enough to kill him, so I tried using chain 1 on him, and this ended up registering as a kill. So I have a feeling Murphy is one of those enemies that either dies or doesn't. I reloaded, and this time he and another guard appeared to get stuck inside the car. I used chain 1 on everyone else around and left him alive, which seemed fine. He was on fire though, so I was a bit concerned he would eventually burn to death. Later on in the stadium, if Murphy is left alive, he will actually make an announcement. And this is the first time I've ever heard it because I usually kill him to loot his iconic weapon.
Intruders in the stadium! Stop them! Don't let them escape! A primary target is a netrunner, Asian woman, heavily chipped, running like a coward.
Anyways, in Somi's path, it is possible to knock out all the guards in the final room, unlike in Reed's. This meant I was able to just walk on through the rest of the escape route. When hopping out of the sewers, it always surprises me that V doesn't offer to catch Somi knowing the state she's in. After saying goodbye, for now I slept a full 24 hours to advance time. Somi tends to take longer to respond than Reed, so we may have to dick around a bit. I figured I might as well attempt to complete some more Phantom Liberty missions, so I tried shot by both sides. Turns out it's impossible to save Bree without killing Dante. The first time I fought him, I tried using Short Circuit, and that just ended up killing him. The second time, I managed to stun him with some hacks and get behind him to grab and knock him out. But the mission does not progress until he dies, so there's really no choice but to have Bree die here. Mr. Hands was not happy about it, but at least Dante gave me some scratch. Next, I did the Leon Rinder gig. I met with Brianna, went to the Scav hideout and popped chain 1 on a bunch of them, and then defeated the enemy. I tried using chain 1 on him too, but he's a boss type, so that didn't work. Thankfully he goes down non-lethally, so we're clear on this one. There's a few different ways of sparing Rinder, including sending him to Regina, but I decided to let him live without that by selecting these options in this order. This still gets you access to his stash. I dropped the tags off and that's another gig wrapped up. The Barga Civil War had begun taking place from the fallout of Kurt Hansen's death at the hands of Alex in this save. Completing Firestarter unlocks a few more gigs, one of which being Heaviest of Hearts, so I did that one. I talked to the Jack guy that hangs out in the club's bathroom, but purely to use him as a store to purchase an upgrade. I used the door by the elevator to get access to a computer to open the VIP access door. In this one, I actually used more chokeouts than Chain 1. Nothing too special otherwise. Maldonado is full of it, but I was hired to delete the testimony, so that's what I asked Georgina to do. With enough body, you can intimidate her bodyguard so you don't have to fight him. And that's another one done with no eliminations. I then did a final pit stop to upgrade cyberware, also doing the same kite and cellular adapter swap I did in Reed's path. Reed called after that, which I totally forgot about, but that meant there was still a lot more time before Somi's call. At this point, I figured I'd have to start sleeping to advance the clock on Song or I'd be clearing the map forever. So I slept 48 hours and she finally did. I went straight to the van and departed for NCX. On the drive over, Somi will ask if it's possible to not hurt others, and there's no unique dialogue for choosing think so. But to be fair, knocking people out doesn't mean it's pain-free. After getting through security, I met Cynthia, who recognizes V if he did Raymond Chandler Evening before. I decided to go the disguise route, so I entered the luggage code, retrieved the suit, and then went to the bathroom to change. Somehow, I've never come across this luggage interaction before. I guess I normally run out of the bathroom too fast.
Relax. I'm with security. Now please, don't leave your luggage unattended. It'll be confiscated if you do.
Oh, sorry.
Anyways, I check back in from my lunch break or whatever this guard made up and slip into the back hallways. At the end of it, there's a staircase to the left that can be accessed with a tech or body check. At the top, there is a panel that you can hack with enough intelligence and it will turn the mechs to friendlies, at least for a little bit. Then it's just up the elevator to the roof to drop the fire hose down to pull Somi up. After crawling into the vents and eavesdropping on Reed and Myers, it's back down into the main area where the NUSA assault has begun. The Corp Bud uniform is unfortunately useless at this point, so I took it off. Then I decided to just sit in the elevator and occasionally pop out to deploy Chain 1 on some of the NUSA guys. Eventually, I took enough of them down to move up. Even though I didn't have the Corp Bud uniform on, it appears that in this room the mechs and orbital air guards won't shoot at you. I was able to slip into the hallway, but this seems to be the trigger area that makes you an enemy to everyone. I was trying to hack some of the Black Ops guys through the door since they were clipping through it. Then the orbital air mech turned on me, so I had to turn around and shut that off. Eventually, I had to open the door and just go forward. Instead of proceeding into the next area, I went back up the stairs from earlier and started beaming everyone from the top. They couldn't really do anything to me up there, although one guy had managed to get up the stairs. After zapping what I thought was the last guy, Songbird said we were clear, but when I got to the elevator, there was still one more. I guess she wanted to get one extra lie in. Next up is the chopper attack, and there's enough time to deal with any incoming enemies while taking cover. Getting to the end of the hall wasn't much of a problem. We arrived at the maglev station, which was certainly going to be the hardest part of this path. After springing the trap, I was able to chain one my way through most of the guards. One of them started hitting a nasty head glitch on me, and while trying to get a lock on him, he sorta two-tapped me with some kind of burst weapon, marking my first death of this run. On reload, I decided to stick to the opposite side, not that it would make much of a difference. The most annoying thing about this is that there's an enemy netrunner that can deploy cyberware malfunction on you, and this shuts you out of using hacks for a few seconds. Once Song got started on the control, I had to go back out there to deal with some more soldiers. And this time, I went to the farthest point of the platform since they were spawning from the other side. This was actually a lot easier than the first encounter since it made them space out more. Once Songbird started talking, I got close to the control room since it'll close as soon as you get in there. This was the make or break moment where I'd find out if the black wall registers as kills or not. The kill counter mod doesn't appear to mention this, so whatever it is, I guess it's vanilla behavior. And it turns out, they don't count. Damn. That's a bit hard to rationalize though, since those guys are probably dead. I guess the least I can do is apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm real sorry, bud. Nice. Problem solved. After Songbird reveals the neural matrix can only be used once, I could have just called Reed then and there, but I decided to take the dialogue route to make me feel a little better about it. This can be achieved by picking the following options in this order. Then he took her away. And that's it. There doesn't appear to be any unique dialogue going this way either, so I take it the team probably expected you to be dropping a lot of bodies throughout the expansion. So that's all the main missions and a handful of gigs and side missions on Very Hard completed without killing a single person. Well, Songbird's path is definitely questionable, but Reed's path looks alright. Here's the stat differences from before and after for Reed's path. 134 total takedowns according to the counter, which seems like a lot, but also not at the same time. Here are the totals for Song's path. 152 takedowns were added in this one, but I also did a few extra missions. There were so many enemies at NCX that I think this should have a much larger difference compared to Reed's path. This leads me to believe that Chain 1 is not registering in the tracker at times. Doing the sit in the back netrunner stuff is pretty chill, but there were a lot of times I really just wanted to pull a gun out and start blasting. Even though this wasn't that difficult, I still think it was an insightful challenge. Some fights are unavoidable, but at least now we know that you can complete them non-lethally. If there are any specific dialogue moments you're curious about, then ask away in the comments and I'll see if I can recall or go through my saves to check. Otherwise, if you ever find someone wondering whether or not you can beat Phantom Liberty with no kills, then send them over. This was a pretty long video, so if you made it this far, hopefully you found it entertaining, and thank you for watching.